Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back into the Zach Gelb Show right here on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. 609-919-9200 is the telephone number if you want to hop on board with us today. In case you missed it, if you're just getting into your car right now, the Philadelphia 76ers have traded for the number 1 overall pick with Boston, and it's Fultz mania now in Philadelphia because Markelle Fultz will be the number 1 overall draft pick for the Philadelphia 76ers on Thursday night. So the trio with the core, Joel Embiid, you have Ben Simmons, and now Markelle Fultz, a guard out of Washington. And now joining us on the hotline, he's an assistant at UConn, but he actually was the assistant coach for Markelle Fultz at Washington this past season. And check out this story on Markelle Fultz. Markelle Fultz, his sophomore year in high school, was on the JV team. Raphael Chillious, the assistant coach now for UConn, who at the time was for Washington, was scouting DeMatha Catholic High School. And he saw a player by Markelle Fultz play in the JV game before the varsity. And Raphael Chillious said, if this kid grows, he's not only going to be an NBA player, but he's going to be an NBA All-Star. And now the Philadelphia 76ers have that player in Markelle Fultz. So we appreciate Raphael Chillious for giving us a few minutes right now. Coach, appreciate the time. Thanks for it. And how are you?
I'm doing well. Just working through summer workouts with our guys and obviously getting prepared for the big night on Thursday.
Well, it's going to be a huge night here in Philadelphia because these fans have been waiting for a competitive basketball team for a long time, and now they're starting to see the benefits from the process. So take me back to that story that I just told right before we brought you on about the first time that you saw Markelle Fultz play basketball.
Yeah, I just happened to be back in the D.C. area doing some other recruiting and got done early, and I just went on to check and see if there are any big local games in the area. I looked, and the varsity of the school was supposed to play that night, so I got there early and sat down and started watching this JV game, and all of a sudden I see this 5'9" kid with long arms and big hands and big feet just all over the court, making plays on offense, defense, playing every position and making all the right plays. And I just got enamored and couldn't stop watching him. And then about halftime, I started telling guys who were at the game sitting there that I know, said, man, that kid, if he grows, he has a chance to be an all-star. And they're like laughing. And so I got up and called back to Washington to Lorenzo Romar and said, look, I'm watching. You're going to call me crazy, but I'm watching this kid on JV, and I think if he grows, he'll be an NBA All-Star. And that's how the story started. And then from then on, I sort of tracked him. And then later in that year, one of my buddies happened to be at the game with me who was laughing at me that night said, hey, you know that kid Fultz you like? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, he's about 6'3" or 6'4" now. And so I got up and went to Lorenzo's office and said, I don't care where we're supposed to be. The first week in April recruiting, we are going to go watch Markelle Fultz play. And from that moment on, we didn't miss a game of his AAU for 2.5 years.
Wow, what a story as we're talking to Raphael Chillious, who joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Coach, a lot of people, they will just look at the optics of this, and I understand that Michael Jordan wasn't always on his varsity team, but they'll look at it and say, how is a kid that's going to be the number 1 overall pick, how is he not playing varsity ball his sophomore year? What's your explanation to that question?
Different places have different processes, right? Like in Philly, what's been going on is called the process. And at his high school, you have to bide your time, and sometimes they're really, really good players who may even be better than a couple of the bench players up on a varsity, but they make you earn it. And, in hindsight, you look at it, because he was on JV and he was very talented that young, he got a chance to play every position and really learn the nuances of how to play. And I think it at the time, he probably didn't feel like it was beneficial, but at the end of the day, it was extremely beneficial to the growth and development of his game.
We hear about his loyalty and how loyal of a person Markelle Fultz is. You saw him commit to Washington and play for you guys last year. How'd you get him to actually come to Washington with some of the other offers that he had?
You know what? We were there first. We were there early, and we were there often. And what we also did in the process is, even though Washington, quote unquote, wasn't the same name as some of the Blue Bloods, for his position, we have quite the history of putting players into the NBA, backcourt players. And players, some of them came in ranked high, Some of them came in unranked, and they turned out to be really good NBA players, and our style of play was attractive to him. But I think most importantly was the men that his mom wanted to trust him with life outside of basketball. I think she really trusted Lorenzo and our staff to be the right men for her son.
Now, we've read all the scouting reports on Markelle Fultz, and we're excited to see him play for the Sixers and also probably see him play in Summer League this upcoming summer. But you got that firsthand experience. You've known the kid for a long time. We keep on hearing about how explosive he is and how he can hit a shot from anywhere on the court. Take me a little bit more into his offensive game, Coach.
Well, it's more than that. As you see, he shot a pretty high three-point percentage, especially 1 point during the season. He was close to 50%. Because Markelle really knows what shots to take and what shots not to take. And I think that's something typically an older player really figures out. But he has a very good feel for when to go and when not to go. And I think what people see is that he's actually a terrific passer, and I think playing with players who can finish the plays a little bit better, I think you'll be able to see that. But I think the number one key with him is just like back to that JV, he's just so versatile. He will have no problem sliding in playing next to Ben Simmons if Ben Simmons has the ball in his hand, because he can make a shot and make a play when he gets the ball. If you ask him to play the two-guard, then he puts on the two-guard mentality, and he becomes an unbelievable scorer. He can really score the ball. Every level he can score it.
And that versatility is so big for the position that Simmons is going to play, because he's a big guy at 6'10", is going to be playing some point, and you have Markelle and him. There should be some good synergy there. But you talk about Markelle Fultz's passing ability. The vision I have, and you even heard him speak a little bit about it during the weekend when he worked out here with the Sixers, is that potential pick-and-roll combination with Markelle handling the ball, and then you have Ben Simmons setting some screens and then throwing it to the basket to Ben Simmons. You can't forget about Embiid as well. It seems like he's walking into a perfect situation, Coach.
Well, basketball, you play triangles, right? And I think they have a pretty good young nucleus triangle between those three. And you can put a lot of pick-and-roll situation where maybe Markelle's in the corner, Ben Simmons coming off a slot pick-and-roll, with Joel Embiid rolling to the basket, Markelle looking out of the corner and making a throwback pass to him, and vice versa. I think it provides a lot of versatility, because until you see Markelle up close, you don't realize how big he is, too. He's a big man.
Wrapping up with Raphael Chillious, who joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Did coach Markelle Fultz last year. Sixers have the number 1 overall pick right now after a trade with Boston. All right, let's get into some things that he needs to improve on. First off, before we do that, a lot of people will look at this pick, and last year, the same thing happened with Ben Simmons. His team didn't make the tournament. Your record at Washington last year was only 9 wins, and you had 22 losses. How do you explain what happened with the number 1 overall pick and having a team that wasn't even anywhere close to the NCAA tournament last year?
Well, the difference between him and Ben is that Markelle missed 11 games, with injury. And had Markelle played in those 11 games at full strength, I think we would have won a little bit more. Markelle's situation was a little different because we had planned on Marquise Chris and DeJounte Murray, 2 other first-round draft picks, won a lottery pick the year before. When we recruited Markelle, we thought those 2 would still be there, at least for another year. And because we were so young the year before, those 2 played so much there was no way they were going to stay in school, because you couldn't quote-unquote hide them, And had they been there, it would have been better. That being said, not to discredit any of the guys who were at Washington, because there are some good college basketball players there, we just didn't have the same firepower as the UCLA or Arizona had. If Markelle had the same players with him to go along with what he had, I don't think that would be a question in the equation.
So there was nothing more he could have done to make that team better?
Look at his stats. I mean,
they speak for themselves.
I think there was something no freshman in the last, I think it was 20 years, have put those type of stats across the board. So, I mean, I don't know what more he could have done except for pass it to someone and take it out their hand and put it in the basket for him. He did all he could do, and it was just a situation where we weren't successful. But I'll tell you what, every level he's been prior to that, all he's done is won. So winning is in there.
When I read the scouting report, and you've seen him play, so you tell me what he has to work on. A lot of people, they mention free throws and then also some of his defensive play. How does he become a better free throw shooter, and how do you evaluate his defense?
I think defensively, the NBA has a chance to be a little better because the help, him off the ball in the NBA, the help is different than it is in college. He's very good at when his man has the ball, locking in and guarding his man. So he's got to learn over time, and all young players need to learn is better team rotation defense. But he'll get that. And obviously free throws, to me, he has great hands. He can really shoot the ball. It's a matter, I think, of getting there and focusing and concentrating when the game's not on the line. When the game's on the line, he makes his free throws. So I think that's more of a concentration thing. And I know the Sixers for sure. I happened to work with one of the assistant coaches when I was at Villanova, Billy Lang, who had to work on shooting quite a lot. I think that will just really, really improve.
Is there a player right now in the NBA that you could compare him to, or that you've seen in the past?
I think he's sort of a hodgepodge because you can't sort of pigeonhole him. People say D'Angelo Russell because he looks smooth, but he's way more explosive than D'Angelo Russell. People say Russell Westbrook. Markelle's fast, but he's not as fast as Russell. I think he has a lot of offensive package like a Steve Francis. So I think he's sort of a hodgepodge combination of a lot of players.
Coach,
to me, he focuses on he likes to be the first Markelle Fultz, and I don't blame him.
Coach, give me a good Markelle Fultz story.
There's just so many. I just know I remember in AAU, he would make something we call when he gets in range. If Markelle's by himself, he may not dunk the ball. But when he gets in range just outside the lane, that first hash mark of the free throw line, like the lower one above the block, if he gets about there and someone challenges him, he is going to dunk on you. And I can't tell you how many times I saw him do that in AAU where guys would sort of misjudge his ability to jump because he'd been laying it in. And then as soon as you step up, when he gets in range, you're getting dunked on.
Coach, why are you so confident? Your confidence is so high in him. Give me the selling point why you think he's going to be a star coming up in the NBA.
For me, I've had so many guys who played for me from South Kent to Washington, to Villanova, back to Washington, and now here at UConn that have played at that level. And they've been some great talent, but I haven't had one like him yet. Isaiah Thomas is the most competitive player I've ever coached. But when you add that competitiveness with his raw natural talent, it's just and I know his work ethic. Like Markelle's not one who talks what he does. If he says he's in the gym, he's in the gym. And he's a person that actually sometimes gets to run out of the gym because he's in there so much. So I know he's going to put the work in because the number one thing with him that I think he has a chance to be successful, he still works as though he's the number 300th player in the country and not the number one draft pick. And when you still work that way, you have a chance to be special.
Well, I love it because the chip's still on his shoulder, and he's not going to get complacent and probably going to win the Sixers a whole lot of games. Coach, before we let you run, wrapping up with Raphael Chillious, you're now at UConn. How'd you end up at UConn? And tell me a little bit about the team that you could expect this year out of the Huskies. KO and I have known each other. Kevin Ollie have known each other since about 1996. And you always get to see guys on the road when you're out recruiting. And obviously with the situation at Washington, happened that I was available. I was a free agent. I got a lot of phone calls. And for me, the opportunity to go to a place where championships are expected, not wanted. There's 4 national championships here. And I was in this state for 5 years at South Kent School at that program. And I knew what UConn was all about. I knew what KO was all about. And I know the opportunity to get UConn back up in that upper echelon, challenging for championships. I like that challenge. So that's how I ended up here. We're going to have a young and I think a really talented team. And if all the guys stay healthy, unlike last year, I think we'll have a chance to make a little noise. But I always tell people I've never met a coach who said they don't have a good team in June. We have to wait and see what happens out there in November. Well, do me a favor. Take it easy on my Temple Owls, all right?
I don't think you can go in any game and take it easy, but I do like Coach Dunn.
One of the best guys, and also DK, who's now on your staff, was there last year. Tell him I say hello. Coach Chillious, we appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and best of luck this upcoming season, and we appreciate your insight.
I appreciate you having me, Zach.
Thanks so much. Raphael Chillious joining us right now on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. There you go. That's the endorsement. Because how many games have you seen Markelle Fultz play this year? If we're asking, I've seen him play 2 or 3 times, I think, at most. Because his games are at Washington. Washington wasn't that good this year. But he's the real deal. I go to someone that's seen him play and that was as clairvoyant enough to think when that kid was on the JV team when he was a sophomore, wow, this guy's not only going to be really good, but he's going to be an NBA All-Star. And that's why I want to hear about him. And that's why we pressed him a little bit on some of the negative stuff. And we wanted to hear how much the record, how much of a reflection of it was on Markelle Fultz this past year. And Raphael Chillious basically said, look at the stats. What else was there to do for him? And I asked him to improve on the free throws. And he believes his defense could be better at the NBA level. The Sixers are getting an explosive player, a player that wants it, a player that still has a chip on his shoulder, a player that is a really good passer. And can you imagine how he's going to fit in the pick and roll with Simmons and Embiid? And then if Simmons is handling the ball, Simmons could also make a nice pass, get to Fultz on the perimeter, and bam, we'll serve that cheesesteak up with some onions, baby. You got to like it. And also, one more thing, and I'll get to Blake in Philly, who's just called in a second. So, Blake, hang tight. One more thing, though. When this thing happened on Saturday, you always got to love, and I'm the biggest cheesesteak guy there is. I love cheesesteaks. I find a way to incorporate a cheesesteak into every conversation. Media gets, 10 minutes with them on Saturday in Camden? And, of course, the cheesesteak question gets in there, and he talks about Larry's, and then people are saying, see, he's a Philly guy. He's a Philly guy. Come on. If he said he never had a cheesesteak in his life before, would you have been like, oh, no, we don't want him. Oh, Bryce Harper can't be a Philly guy. We don't want him. You got to love that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, he played it really well because he's been to a Sixers game before. He's been to Philadelphia before, more than a few times, and he walked right into the facility knowing, he knew, the Sixers want me. They're going to make this trade. And what did he do? He had on the Sixers hat. You got to love it. The Sixers have their core, baby. You got Simmons, you got Embiid, you got Fultz, and they're only going to add more to it. All right, we'll go out to the phone lines right now, 609-919-9200. Blake in Philly. He's all jacked up about the Markelle Fultz trade as the Sixers now have the #1 pick. Blake, what's happening? What's on your mind, my friend?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing great. The Sixers have the #1 overall pick. How do you think it's going?
I'm feeling real good. I don't know if you remember, but I came on last week arguing, to take Dennis Smith at 3, and he was a point guard.
Forget Dennis Smith. Throw him in the
trash.
trash.
Hey, I know. I'm happy now. We got a point guard, finally. So, I just want to talk about him. Mainly, coming out, you mentioned it when you were on the phone with the other guy. He had a 9-20 record at Washington. He's playing in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 isn't, they're no snubs. They're Power 5. Arizona's always competing. You saw Lonzo Ball. I think TJ Leaf went to UCLA. So, you can't disregard the competition that goes on in the Pac-12. And I think a lot of people are doing that,
It's funny you say that because I had Seth Greenberg on, who's one of the more respected people on Friday. And this was before this whole trade went down or even before you had the Wojnarowski tweets and the Mark Stein tweets. And he said that was a concern for him. He thinks Fultz is going to be a good player, but there was a concern with the record. And he had the exact opposite argument you just had. He thought the talent was a little bit better at Washington, and he didn't think the Pac-12 was that great. I will say this, though. We're not going to be thinking, if he comes out in his first game this year and has an awesome game, no one's going to be referencing this record. I think they're getting a special player, and I think this kid's going to be the real deal. I really do.